Hello out there in podcast land. It's me, David Robertson.
And it's me, Christopher Cotter.
And it's us, the Religious Studies Project.
Your friendly neighbourhood Religious Studies Project.
And yeah, this week apparently sponsored by Marvel. No, we're not at all.
Although we would take it.
Yeah, if you're listening from Marvel.
If you want to sign up for Patreon.
Yeah, I mean, superheroes, as we've done that before. We can easily set you up a podcast. We're not doing that this week. As you can tell, Chris and I are giddy with coffee and work. But what we have got for you is a hugging guru in this interview with Marianne Qvortrup Fibiger, recorded by Sammy Bishop at the EASR earlier this year. And the title is The Hugging Guru, Amma and Transnationalism. So I'm going to just pass straight over to Sammy and Marianne.
Hello, I'm Sammy Bishop. I'm here at the EASR conference in Bern. I am here with Marianne Qvortrup Fibiger, who is Associate Professor at Aarhus University. So thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for that I'm allowed to come here and talk about my subject matter.
How's your conference going so far?
Oh, great. There's a lot of good panels and a lot of good keynotes. And I think you can see how religion and the way that we are talking about religion is changing. And I think that's a really good thing.
Okay, so your current research is focusing on Amma, the hugging guru.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so for those people who aren't so familiar with it, could you just tell us a bit about who Amma is?
Today, she's a transnational guru. She was born in 1953 in Kerala, which is in South India. And she was a fisher. She is from the fisherman class, a low-caste Hindu family. And she grown up and she had, this is very typical that you look on her story in a retrospective way. And there she has some special abilities all the way she did things all the way back to when she was around 9 years old. And this has just been developing. So you can talk about her going from being a very local girl with special abilities, becoming what you will say within the Hindu tradition, a kind of a Shakti representative, meaning that she has some kind of special female energy, which is are related to the goddesses, which can incarnate in people. And from that, she becomes a local guru you can go to and ask questions. But also, and that is the main thing about her, she is also giving healing hugs. And from there, it developed, she developed, the devotees around her became more, until she's also became a guru for Western devotees. And that is where we are now. And what the organization around her called MAM is writing on the webpage. Please look into that. It's really interesting to read. She has been giving 35 million hugs all around the world. So what is interesting is that she's appealing both to European Americans. She's still appealing also to local Hindus, as well as national. She's also appealing to middle-class Hindus from all over India, and even Indians living in diaspora. So she's a trans-local or transnational global guru of today.
And when it comes to these different groups of devotees, what's the main appeal? Is there different appeals for different groups? And does she pitch her message differently?
Yeah, it's and that's what you always answer as a researcher. It's a both and. So in one way, she's saying the same things. The ears that hears differs. So I think that what she says, translated, interpreted in different ways. If you look on Indians, local Indians, transnational Indians, and European American devotees. And that is what is interesting, that she can say something that in some ways goes into the mind or the brain and the heart to devotees from all over the world. And what I think, and that is one of my theses, is that hypothesis is that she is balancing between being very traditional, a Bhakti Guru, where she has a special devotionalism related to her, but also, and then she has kind of authenticity, it's very open, how you can see she is a Indian guru. And on the other hand, she has universal messages. And also that she's a woman, I think that's important. And she has this idea that she herself is incarnating a message. She is incarnating what she thinks is the main way of understanding religion, namely love. She says religion is love. My religion is love. And she thinks that she should be acting accordingly. So that's why she's also, giving these hugs, which should be healing both the person that she heals, and that is very important in relation to the way we understand the world today, she will also heal the world, which is bleeding, as she said. So she also have this kind of very universal message that appeals to everyone. And when we are talking about this conference, you can hear how many who is referring to how climate changes the Anthropocene, that it is the human beings in the world who are the main reason for why the climate changes are so rapidly going the wrong way. And she's talking into that kind of discourse, which everybody thinks is important.
And you mentioned briefly there the gendered nature of her message, and the name Amma obviously meaning mother.
Sure.
Could you say a bit more about that, maybe particularly regarding the climate change aspect as well?
Yeah, you can talk about this being a female or representative of a kind of female energy on different levels. You can talk about it in relation to a Devi worship, the goddess worship, where the goddess is incarnated in a person in the world. Someone thinks she is like that, and then she's a Devi, and then they called her Devya, Amritana Dharmayi, which is her name. And sometimes she's Mata, mother, which devotees I've been interviewed say she is like a mother to us, and she talks about her devotees as her children she wants to take care of. And that is, what you can do being a female. In another perspective, she's also related to Mother Earth, that being a female, she is kind of entangled in the understanding of the earth as a mother, who is the main reason for life on earth. And on the other hand, is also a mother who is bleeding. She can be inscribed in different ways of understanding what a female or the female can do in relation to also to appealing to people in another way that if it was a male. And
just thinking about her representing different things as well in this very kind of international span that she has. You mentioned in your presentation yesterday how she's been representing Hinduism at the UN. Yeah. Could you say a bit more about that?
It was back in 2010 where she was invited to the United Nations, and maybe she didn't play the major role there, but she was invited. There was also a speech kind of greeted that she gave her the time to come and represent Hinduism there. And there was a man, Mr. Dosai. He's the representative for public and private partnership in New York. And in the end of his talk, he said, "What you do bring happiness to people. You are truly a saint." This is interesting because he is using the notion of the concept saint, which is having also Christian connotations. So in that way, she was inscribed in a Christian or in a more universal understanding of her. She was inscribed. She can be part of all kinds of denominations and relations to the world.
So taking it down to your current research at the moment, as I understand it, it's been on her ashram in Kerala. So could you tell us a bit about the groups of people who were there and kind of what goes on there?
Her ashram in Kerala, it's called Amritapuri, and I was visiting the first time all the way back in 2006, 2007, where I did fieldwork in Kerala about goddess worship, and I thought I need to go there. And I was kind of struck by the way it was organized, because it was organized by European American devotees. And I was kind of, well, is it a new way of colonizing here, not the land, but the tradition? And was going to have a hug. I need to see what is he doing, didn't feel that much, I must admit. But then I should take a kind of a token, you take a token and you are queuing up. And I was set to queue up. There was 2 queues, one for the Indians and one for European Americans. And say, no, we can't do like this. But it seems like the Indians actually didn't mind. And what I saw, I was also seeing how she was doing very big darshans where 40,000 people each came, also in India. And I saw how the European American devotees was organizing everything, and they were sitting in front in white gowns when all the different Hindus were sitting in the back. And then I was thinking about, how come it is like that? Is it a good or bad thing for the tradition also in India? And what I can see today is that this kind of translation, that the European American devotees is trying to translate the local Indian tradition to a more global one, is now appealing to the growing Indian middle class in India, which is really interesting. And it has not only to do with guru worship or guruism, but it also has to do with the relationship between what we can call, it's wrong to call it, between East and West. And what you can see is that it's an example of a religionist dynamic, how it's very important that you understand religion not as rooted in one context, but that we follow its roots around the world. And when I think it's Clifford who says that, you look at not roots, but roots, how it's traveling. And in the traveling, the tradition is changing.
Sorry to interrupt the episode, but we just wanted to let you know, to remind you about our Patreon link. The Religious Studies Project has always been free since its inception, but we know that there's a great problem in academia with people not being paid for the work that they're expected to do, particularly early career scholars. And we at the RSP want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So you can help if you can spare even £1 a month by going to patreon.com/projectrs and subscribing. We know that these podcasts are very useful for people who are teaching and people in their learning. So if you can help, either by subscribing there or by making a one-off donation using the PayPal button on our website, it'd be greatly appreciated and will help us keep bringing you this podcast for free and fight against exploitation in academia. But now, back to the episode.
But what is interesting when it comes to the globalized world, these kind of changes is not only good for, or is not only a way that the devotees in European countries understand the tradition, but now also because this translation of the tradition is turning back to India. And suddenly middle-class Indians or Hindus who in many ways are secularized and feel disconnected from the tradition that they grew up in, get reconnected to the Hindu tradition again. And so this is interesting, I think, and it's a new way of looking on how ideas is circulating very quickly and translated in such a way that the appeal is wider than you believe it would be thinking at it, from a first order perspective. And I think that's interesting. And I also did fieldwork in Mauritius among Hindus there. In Mauritius it's a majority, Hindus are majority, but they also in many ways secularized, understood as, making a compartmentalization between being religious and in other ways they are very much secularized. Amma was visiting Mauritius the first time in 1987, a lot of people suddenly understood the tradition that they didn't understood any longer through her way. And also the European American devotees who was traveling along with her, they were kind of reconnected to the Hindu tradition again. So this is, a way of understanding this kind of entanglement of different ways of translating or understanding and religion. And is a crucial example of religion is both context related, but also a very dynamic phenomenon.
Yeah. And when it comes to European and American devotees having great influence in the organization,
sure.
Do you find certain people kind of laying claims to the tradition and other people critiquing the involvement of these Western devotees as well?
Yeah, of course you find someone who thinks that we need to take the tradition back to the Indian rootings again. Or some conservative Hindus thinks that she is too inclusive. And some are also criticizing the way that she is dealing with some of her, right-hand people who are also representing the Mam tradition when they are doing things which is, in their perspective, not part of the Hindu tradition. So what you'll see, and it's the same when some Hindus thinks or are arguing that we need to get yoga back to the Hindu or Indian tradition again. So sometimes you will always see that, when things are changing, someone wants it to stop, to change, and they want to root it back in a tradition which can be difficult also to define. But so you see this kind of the way of people want to get hold of it again and not make it open for the whole world.
Yeah, it seems that a lot of the discourses around it are fairly similar to the ones that happen around yoga as well.
Sure.
Do you find it helpful comparing the two, or are there certain ways they differ?
Well, yeah, you can do that. But the differences between Amma is that she's a guru, she's a person, and yoga is a phenomenon. So, I mean, it's more easy to get hold or grab on, what are the messages of a person who's still alive, and they have a grab on yoga, which have been changing since it. People even don't know when it started. Should we go back all the way to the pre-Vedic tradition when it comes to yoga, or should we kind of place it in the Upanishadic tradition and things like that? So, I mean, here you can actually take her messages and you can try to decipher it and try to criticize it because it's there. I mean, and yoga is in many ways, a floating signifier.
Yeah. Are there certain ways in which Amma was able to sort of claim authority as a guru?
Yeah, and I think that's very important as well. So it's fine that you ask me that question, because on the one hand, she has this kind of universal message. On the other hand, she's very much inscribed in a Hindu Guruism, in a Bhakti devotionalism, and she also understands herself as a karma yogi, as an yogi who's acting in the world. In one perspective, she's inclusive. In another perspective, she's also exclusive, and that, I think, this kind of balancing between inclusivism and exclusivism make her so appealing, both for Indians and also for European and American devotees. And in relation to that, I think it's so interesting to see. I've been interviewed devotees, especially in Denmark, where I'm from, and they're telling me how they are really trying to stick to the Indian tradition. So in some ways, and understand me correctly, in some ways, they are trying to be kind of more traditional that a lot of Hindus are living in Indian or around her ashram. They are telling me that, they would like to learn some mantras in Sanskrit. They are having Guru Purnima, where they are having a special day where they are devoted to their guru, which they do in Denmark and Germany, everywhere. And I was participating in one of these Guru Purnimas, and they are very anxious to do the puja in the right manner. And because I was there, they were kind of, did we do it the right way, or should we do it like that with flowers and things like that? So I mean, that is also interesting, right? So she's never changing her behavior as being an Indian guru, I think is important as well. And it's appealing to American, European devotees.
Just to change the topic slightly as well, you raised the idea there of your presence as a researcher kind of affecting the behavior of devotees slightly as well. Yeah. Was there, talking about research methods, was there certain problems that you came up against, or could you say a bit more about that?
Yeah. It's always difficult just to be a fly on the wall. When you are there and when you have been presented yourself as being a researcher and not a Amma devotee, people are very much concerned about how do we then represent the tradition that you want to write about. And also, in what way will you having a critical point of departure, or do you want kind of do it in a way that could promote our tradition? And I think it's very important as a researcher that you tell, the reason for being there. And also, I think it's very important that you, when you write the things in relation to be a researcher. And it's has to do with the big discussion about being emica and ethic, or also the big discussion, phenomenological relation to the tradition, which I know a lot of anthropology thinks is important, that you can't do research on something that you haven't been part of yourself. I think it's important, and people could criticize that I try to stand 3 steps behind what I'm actually doing. And I think people are accepting that. I might not get all the answers that a person who will be part of, the Amma group, but I get some other answers, and I could put it into, and I think that's important too. That's the way I'm brought up in academia, that you have some kind of theoretical point of departure when looking at empirical phenomenon. And I will always do that. And it can give some backslash, but as long as you as a researcher are very clear in your mind, in the way you're writing, and also towards the one you are doing fieldwork in relation to, I think you do what you can do. Other one will disagree with that, but I think in my perspective, it's important.
So going forward as well, where do you see your research going in the future? I
think it will go in different direction. I've always been interested in Hinduism and diaspora. And the reason for being interested in that field particular is firstly to see, how religion is changed in relation to the social, cultural context. But also because, Hinduism is so difficult to define. I'm not going to tell you, but I just say it anyway, that I promise my students I will retire if I get to know what I'm actually an expert in. But I think it's very important that Hindus in diaspora is trying to put some words on what is the Hindu tradition, being away from where the tradition has been part of culture for ages. Suddenly you try to figure out, what do we want to keep, and what do we want to leave behind? And what I see, and I think that's interesting, both in relation to Hinduism, but also in relation to understanding religion as a dynamic phenomenon. So my research will keep on trying to look on Hindus in diaspora, but also I've done a book together with one of my colleagues called East Spirit, but how ideas, concept, notions are circulating between what we call East and West. And what I think is so interesting is to see also how this is changing the way that Europeans are looking on their lives, on the world. But in a way, and I have also written an article where I'm not talking about the Easternization or the process of Easternization of the West, but I'm trying to argue for a new concept called the Westernization, meaning that the Eastern concept and notions are translated in a Western way, so they give meaning also in a Western context. And I've also been researching, and I would like to do a bit more about it, about how Indian or Hindu tropes is getting new meanings in a European context. Especially, as an example, you can talk about karma, which in many ways in European context is a kind of a feel-good notion. And if you compare what karma actually means in India, it has totally changed. Also in relation to the understanding of reincarnation as another go, a new possibility. I think that's interesting too. That's, and you can't say that, the way you understand reincarnation or karma is wrong. It's just embedded in a new European context, which make it possible, the concept to change. So I think that's really interesting, and I think that's so important. But also in the discussion of how come that notions from Hinduism and Buddhism is not a kind of worldviews coming to Europe is not kind of now it is taking over another worldview. It is more like what a lot of people I've been interviewing, it's more like something, a part of a new way of understanding yourself. So it's not that you have to choose between your old worldview and the Eastern one, but you can combine it. And I think it's interesting how come that concepts from India, it's much easier to be entangled or being kind of a floating signifier that can be rooted in a Western tradition as well. So that's some of the things I would like to work with, and there's a lot of things to do. So I hope someone else will take up these ideas.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that as well. Okay. Marianne, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for us a lot to talk a little about something I'm really interested in a research perspective.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that, Sammy. Great to get the first of your interviews. Or have we had the other one yet? Actually, no, we haven't. Good to get the first of your interviews from the EASR out there. Lots of hugging happened at the EASR, particularly the Tuesday night social, where there was a wonderful sight of Giovanni Casadio and Steve Sutcliffe and everyone dancing to Thriller. So it was appropriate for that conference to generate an interview on hugging.
I'm sorry to have missed that, but I have memories of many a conference involving senior scholars dancing. Steve Sutcliffe again at the BASR in Wolverhampton is a particularly fond memory, but also Graham Harvey. The BASR hosted the EASR. It's the first time I've ever seen him with his hair down.
Exactly. So maybe there's a podcast in there on the study of religion and cracking out moves. Sort of in the Edinburgh semester, we're in week 8 of 10. So we're nearly there, although there'll be lots of essays coming in. How's your Open University semester going?
Just gearing up. I'm marking the first TMA. That's what we call our assessments. Just this week. So it's coming thick and fast for me, but I love it.
We do love it. What we also love is roundtable discussions. We've been having a lot of those of late, which was good because we we had a couple of years where we didn't really have any roundtable discussions, and now they're coming back in thick and fast. Next week it's one that was recorded in Belfast in the council chamber. It was quite a nice venue for you to be recording it.
Austere.
And it's on a controversial subject.
Yes, we love controversy here at the RSP. It's entitled New Directions in the Study of Scientology, and it was myself, Aled Thomas, Carol Cusack and Stephen Gregg. And we'd been talking a long time about this project, and I'm glad we finally managed to do it. And I've set up quite a big response. It's going to be interesting. I won't name names until I actually get the copy in my inbox, but I'm looking forward to the discussion which will inevitably follow.
Exactly. And I'm sure next week we can discuss why the discussion that will inevitably follow is, perhaps more controversial than if we'd been focusing on new directions in the Church of Scotland.
Yes.
Probably more interesting as well.
Well, it would certainly be fewer celebrities involved, let's put it that way.
Anyway, listeners, we will wave goodbye to you for the moment. But just keep checking the website. Still aware that there's plenty of wee niggles in the website. We've been flat out, haven't had a chance to collate and deal with them, but we love it. And we love you. Thanks for listening. The Religious Studies Project is sponsored by the British Association for the Study of Religions, the North American Association for the Study of Religion, and the International Association for the History of Religions. The RSP is produced by the Religious Studies Project Association, SCIO, a Scottish charitable incorporated organisation, charity number SCO 47750.
Brought to you by founders and editors-in-chief Chris Cotter and David Robertson, and our managing editor Thomas J. Coleman III. Our features are edited by Jonathan Tuckett, and our Opportunities Digest by Ella Bogg. Podcast transcription by Helen Bradstock, with audio editing by Gregory Schneider and Samuel Ward. Social media managed by Ray Radford, and sales and marketing by Sammy Bishop.
Don't forget you can support the project by using our amazon.com.co.uk and .ca links, or donating at patreon.com/projectrs. And you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, YouTube, iTunes and other portals.